Are you looking for special magic techniques to mind control yourself so that you can get through this and be great? The promise of this show is that by the end of this class or show, whatever, you are going to be able to have unbelievable tools. We have an amazing Rabbi Aryeh Nivin from Israel to give us awesome strength and power to make ourselves great during this time. Stay tuned. We're so honored and privileged to have Rabbi Aryeh Niven. He's got a chabura, which is it's a international teleconference that he's been doing for 16 years, helping people to maximize their potential, and he's really good at it. He's world-renowned. He's been written up in countless periodicals and blogs and all over the place. He's got a lot of students around the world who absolutely adore him and love him. You're going to love him too. Welcome, Rabbi Niven. Thank you for being on the show today.
Hi, how are you? Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And I am just so interested because one of the things that you talked about is that this is uncertain times. So maybe I'm going to first of all, maybe tell what your organization is and explain it also in English or whatever, translate everything, and then explain a little bit about what you do, and then we'll go right into uncertainties that people are dealing with.
Yeah, I run personal development chaburas, Jewish personal development chaburas based on Mussar, Chassidus, a little bit of Kabbalah, and a lot of positive psychology. I've been running them for 16 years, and I have hundreds of people a week who are participating in my program. And we have like a 5-year curriculum that takes you from the beginning of Jewish personal development all the way to the higher levels where you can teach, and I run training programs and how to do it awesome. And I also have a research institute, which in Hebrew is called the Machon Ha'adam HaShalem, the Institute for the Perfection of Man, where we're researching techniques and figuring out how to do it better all the time.
That's phenomenal. So chabura. How does it translate chabura?
It's like a workshop. It's a group workshop. I have about let's say 10 a week, and every night I have 1 or 2 a day, on each one on a different topic: anxiety, negativity, whatever the marriage, everything. I have training chaburas also. And we have different people come from all over the world, literally all over the world, into my phone call. And we work together, and I have people in my group now for 12, 13 years already. Can you imagine that? And we have people, 5 years, 7 years, 8 years. And I have people here who are also my training programs for 3 or 4 months. So we have a whole virtual community. The oldest virtual community in the world, in the Jewish world today.
And there you go. So now, anybody who's watching, think in your head, if you've ever had a question to ask somebody who's very, very wise and who can really give you an answer, type it in below, comments, this is the time. We want your questions. This is a participant, what's it called, Sarita? Interactive, engaging, whatever. We want your questions. We're going to go right through a very fast, exciting curriculum, but we want your questions so that we can get them answered right here, right now. This is live. Okay, Rabbi, let's start right now. Tell me, we are feeling overwhelmed. We're feeling like we can't, like if I could just manage my mind, a lot of the other stuff I could work it, but it's just like my head goes here and goes there and regret from why did I yell at this kid? And I've got all these pressures. I feel like I'm in a crucible. How do I rise above it and be my best self?
Okay, so what happens when we get overwhelmed? That's the question. Okay, so right now we got to decide: is there going to be summer camp? Is there not going to be summer camp? Are my kids? Is the school going to open? Not. There's so many different things. How do I deal with all my children at home? Right now I have 7 children at home and another whole bunch in exile. I don't want to say how many. So how do you do it? So we're overwhelmed, and part of the thing is there's no answers. And at least in Israel, every week or two, they're rolling out new directions and things like that. You can go crazy because there's hundreds of things going on in your mind. So our brain is like if we compare it to a computer, there's bandwidth, there's a processor, and when there's too many variables in our mind, what happens is our brain overloads. And that overload is called overwhelm. When we're an overwhelmed mind, we then get anxious. Right? Then we get anxious. You get it? So there's overwhelm, and then there's anxiety about the overwhelm, and then we short circuit. So what do? Right? So the first thing you have to do is you have to use mind control. You have to say, okay, I'm not going to know if the camps are going to be open for 2 weeks, so I can't obsess about that. I'm only thinking forward for 2 weeks, right? I can't think past that 2-week time period. So you draw a line in your mind where you're thinking, and you don't allow yourself to think past that. And that takes away at least 50% of the variables. Okay, now I'm going to be home for the next 2 weeks. Okay, what are the decisions I need to make then? So you need to cut down the number of decisions you have to make by drawing a line in the sand and saying, I'm not going to think beyond that. If I think beyond that time period, my brain will just short circuit. You see what I'm saying? There's too many things going on at once. So what we have to do is we have to lower the amount of input by cutting out the variables in our mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it makes sense to do it. I'm not quite sure how one tells their mind not to think of something that you're already thinking of. Like you're ruminating about the fact that your husband said, you did all the dishes, you did this, you did that, and you came and said, look, I did this and this. He said, yeah, but you didn't get the groceries didn't get on time, and whatever it is, and you're like you're upset, your emotions have taken over you, and like saying, oh, I'm not going to think about that sounds like a fantasy.
No, so what you do is, okay, so let's take, you're sitting there, it's the end of the day, you're overwhelmed, you're anxious, you're going insane. So the first thing you do is there's a thing called a mind dump. You take a piece of paper, you just let everything flow out of your mind without any filtering. Just releasing it on a piece of paper is a tremendous release. Okay, then you see, there's 5 or 6 or 7 things going on over here, right? Now there's another thing, which is a mind mapping software. If you like, you can do it on your hand, you can do it on a mind mapping software. You can actually type into a computer. We have this thing called X-Mind. You can type the whole thing out. And then when you type it out, you should actually see all the different things going on in my mind at once, right? So what we have to do is we have to understand there's just too much going on. So you dump it onto a piece of paper, or you organize it with some type of software, or you just write it out with your hand. And then you say, listen, I see there's too much going on over here. I'm just going to not think about this for the next 2 weeks or so, right? Because it doesn't make sense. I can't. You see, there's too many changes going on in a 24-hour period or in a 48-hour period. There's too much we don't know. So if we don't divide and conquer it and just say, okay, this I'm filtering out for next week, or this I'm doing for this week. And then if you make it like I'm living in the daily cycle or the weekly cycle, then I can survive. But if I'm going to go in the 3 or 4 month cycle, how am I going to survive this? You go crazy. So in Israel, the rules change literally every 48 hours, every 72 hours, right? Which schools are going to open, how they're going to open, the way they're going to open, which kids are going to school, which kids are not. You go crazy. I'm going to make a line in the sand in time. I'm not going to think past that. And that releases a huge amount of anxiety if you have the ability to do that.
Right. Rabbi Niven, we have an Instagrammer who wants to know, how do we not listen to the news when they keep extending the quarantine and our anxiety is just ratcheting up because we keep hearing that it's not ending and there's no really end in sight?
Listen, I shut off my WhatsApp notification feeds of all the news because I was going insane. So I just go in once or twice a day. Once or twice a day I check up. And then I try to gain, I read for 15 or 20 minutes and I see what they know and what they don't know. So you have to know that a lot of people are pretending that they know and they really don't know. So you just, you filter, right? Just say they don't know yet and I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait a week until probably they're going to know. Like the summer camps are going to know within a week or 2, right? So I'm just not going to think about summer camp for a week or 2 because it's a waste of time. Once I know that, then I'll be able to work out the rest of the summer.
I wonder if people like you're saying, you do the brain dump, the mind dump. I love that because I'm a journalist. I like to, when I get things out on paper, it's like the emotions just calm down. So
Right.
that you do the mind dump. Now you realize I'm not going to know this fact, that fact, this fact, and I want to put it in a compartment. I want to box it up, and maybe visualizing boxing it up and putting it inside and putting duct tape over it or whatever. But maybe having a little Post-it note or a little index card or even on your phone somewhere saying, these, I wonder on a piece of paper, because on your phone you may not look it up, but if it's on a piece of paper on your mirror somewhere, these are the things that I'm giving myself permission not to think about in the moment.
For sure. And you can, we're going to talk later about healthy habits, right? Healthy habits, having a schedule every day, having a priority Seder every day. So you're right. I have written on my thing here, don't think about X, Y, Z until one. I use a Google Calendar. So I know when I'm going to re-access things by putting it onto a calendar program or scheduling program. Absolutely.
Okay, that's okay. So this is. Are there any other? Before we move on to the next step, are there any other tools for mind control to not be overwhelmed?
Well, you have to understand if your brain is exploding, you have to release, right? So, like, I don't know what the rules about exercising by you or various things like that. I don't even know what the new rules are. I think I'm allowed to go 500 meters out away from my house or something. But make sure you exercise, make sure you get out, make sure you decompress, make sure you do self-care. And that will release what's going on in your mind also. You have to make sure and sleep, getting enough sleep, right? So when the brain is exploding like that, you just have to deal with the different, there's a lot to talk about how to get rid of anxiety, but these are small, simple techniques and how to do it. As we go through more and more of the material, you'll see there's a lot of, see a lot.
I would love to hear one tip about anxiety, because I have a lot of students who are emailing about anxiety. Like I feel like I never have that sense of calm. It's always like and I've never had that in my life. Like this is, there's a lot being written about it. Does Rabbi have just one standing on one foot about anxiety?
Yeah, and while Rabbi addresses that, just to cut in, we have 2 Instagrammers asking. The anxiety in my home, obviously something that I can control, but the outside world and the schools and the camps, they're adding to that anxiety, because the camps are saying you need to sign up. It's first come, first served basis, and you need to get your child in. The schools are saying you've got 20 Zooms a day and you've got 4 or 5 kids, so everyone has a different time Zoom and everyone has different things going on, and sometimes they overlap. So it's very easy to say, okay, I'm going to work on all this, I'm going to dump all my stuff and write it down, but how do you deal with the outside stuff that is still affecting your internal home?
There's a thing called the laws of transition. Okay, we're all transitioning into a new reality over here. Okay, we bought 3 brand new telephones for my children yesterday. We're using telephones and not computers yet. So I have a kid sitting in every corner with a different telephone. So we're learning all these new skills. So we have to be good to ourselves and understand that when you're transitioning, it takes time. It takes time to transition. We're learning how to homeschool. We're learning how to live all of our family together in one apartment. We're learning, all these different skills. So we have to understand that there's a transition time period, and even though the school might tell us, you got to get all your kids online, so fine. So you'll transition over a week to doing it, right?
Okay, it's good. Good answer. Okay, let's go on to number 2, because I thought this was very, very interesting. I actually haven't myself talked to anybody who's had this, but Rabbi has been talking to hundreds of people every week, and he's seen a lot of this. So Rabbi, you're going to talk to us a little bit about epiphanies that people are having while they are in this lockdown and quarantined all over the world or whatever. They're having epiphanies about their lives. I mean, I guess it's not true. I have heard about it, but I don't know anyone this is like the big thing. They're mostly surviving. But Rabbi has seen a lot of people who are having epiphanies, and that would be an amazing thing if that's what came out of it. So maybe talk to us a little bit about epiphanies.
I'm talking all over the world all day long, literally all day long, because I wake up in the morning, I talk to LA, by the way, and then I'm talking to New York, and I'm talking to South America, Australia. I'm talking all over the world, and there's definitely, aside from the tragic things that are going on, all the tragedies, there's many people who are telling me that they're having amazingly deep insights. Now, there's the top 5 or 10, but people are having deep insights about the nature of their family. Women are loving being home with the children. Fathers are realizing they're workaholics. You ever think about that, right? Well, fathers are saying, I've abdicated my children to the system. I never spend time with my children, right? So people are having insights about the family. People are having the insights about life. And, the very fact that the economies of the world and the culture of the world was brought down in a week. You think about that. The Olympics have been running consistently since 1875. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
The Kentucky Derby never missed a year since 1875. Broadway, sports, it's all shut down in the blink of an eye. So there's a lot of people having amazing insights about life, about family, about their marriage, right? About marriage, and the nature of their marriage, and men are realizing that I got too absorbed in my work and I forgot to spend quality time with my wife. And now that they're home many, many hours every day, they're connecting to the family more. They're connecting to the children more. Davening. People are connecting to davening, right, in a different way, because they were relying on the minyan, and now they realize
that's praying. That's praying. Just
praying, right? Yeah. Right. That's right. People are, So there's many people having many insights, deeper insights, because their life has been turned upside down, and it's extremely, extremely important to, if you're having that, to take some time to having a deep thinking introspection seder, to write them down, to capture them. And after you capture them, you might not know what to do about them, but there's another stage, what to do afterwards, after you get them. So this is, the potential for changing your life and getting deep insights and growing in this time period is action.
So how does someone take if they have an epiphany or they have a realization, if a man says, oh, I realized I'm a workaholic. So now, but I have to work that much in order to pay for school tuition and a house or an apartment or whatever it is. How does one actualize, how do you take these insights and make them into your actual day-to-day life?
Well, there's a couple phases. There's a couple of phases. We actually have a chabura that's going to be launched now for a whole month that we're going to be starting from the beginning. We're going to go through a 4-week process.
It starts this Sunday, right?
This Sunday, yeah.
This Sunday. Everybody, you can go to www.mychabura.com. We'll put the link in below. It's MYCH.
No. It's newchabura.com.
Oops. Stand corrected. New Chabura, NEWCHABURA.com. And you can go and sign up there for this Sunday. He's doing a month-long workshop. It's a must-see workshop, and it's very reasonably priced, Rabbi. I don't know how you end up doing that, but it's very reasonably priced. And I think that it answers this exact question. But anyway, answer it for the people here who because I think it's crucial.
You have to isolate it. What am I learning about my wife and my family and my children, about God, about Judaism, whatever your issues are. And then you might have a resistance. You might have chakra denial. You have to go through that phase. And after you go through the chakra denial phase, you have to sit down and say, listen, I don't know how to cut down my hours, right? I myself have that issue, right? Well, my boys are home, but I want to regain my fatherhood. They're at yeshiva all day long, right? So I myself have that issue. So now, okay, what time? So I guess I need to learn time management, or I guess I need to have a mentor. Maybe I need to get a business mentor, how to cut down my job. Maybe I can pivot. So getting the epiphany is one thing, accepting it is another, and then coming up with a plan to move forward is stage 3, which is more of a long-term answer. Just because you got the epiphany doesn't mean you know the how, but it's the decision that I'm going to conquer my long work hours or quality time with the wife. I made a decision on the direction. This is where I'm going. And I want to say the other thing, we're in the Omer time period right now between Pesach and Shavuos. It's the greatest time in the whole year to change your character traits. This month we're in right now to change your character traits, to change your emotions right now.
Great.
Okay, so it's no accident that this is all happening in this time period.
Fantastic. Let's go to the next topic, which is exposing fault lines in our marriage, in our relationships, in our parenting, in who we are, in our own self-actualization, in recognizing those fault lines. And I thought when you were talking about that yesterday for the pre-interview, I was kind of like, wow, like that's kind of like what every show we've been doing during this crisis is about the fault lines, is recognizing that, wow, I'm not, here's the gap between who I am and where I am and who I thought I was or who I'd like to be. And that is kind of painful. So how do we, and we focused a lot on now's not the time to take on big internal projects because you're just surviving. We're all just surviving, So, without putting a burden on people with this, what are your insights about the fault lines that people are noticing in their lives?
A lot of boys are home from yeshiva. You don't get to really know. I mean, you know them, you see them on Shabbos, but now you're really getting to know them. You're getting to see who they are and what they are. You might say, hey, something, I'm disappointed in the product. I'm disappointed with how things are turning out. Or somebody might say, something, I'm spending quality time with my wife right now, and I realize that we've become distant. She's become a roommate instead of a wife, right? I'm sure you speak about that also, right? Or people might have ADHD children, and the system might be failing them. So we're confronted right now, we might be confronted with serious stuff. So, aside from that denial part that I spoke about before, we say in the chaburas that when you have a direction conflict, it's your best friend. Right? Why is it your best friend, right? Because, wow, I get to decide with who I am. I have self-knowledge. I see for sure I'm not satisfied with how that boy is turning out, or I'm not going to let my marriage continue right now. And once you get past the denial, I accept it. I'm going to move forward on it. And that's your best friend, right? Because if we run around, one of the insights that people have, one of the epiphanies is how fast their life is, right? They're running around from this to this wedding and that bar mitzvah, and this project and this carpool and this hobby and this. Now they're home for 2 months with their kids. They say, something, my life is really sped up. I don't want to go back to that. I want to go back to the simplicity. People, they want to have a wedding with 50 people. Can you believe that?
Instead of you don't say hello to anybody, is that what you're saying?
200 instead of like 5.
Sorry.
We didn't hear what you said, Sarit.
I said instead of 200, Leah, more like 500. The wedding.
That's right, 500, right? I did a wedding in my backyard once for a couple, 10 people. The couple was a tallis and 4 poles. It was the most beautiful wedding I ever did in my life. I just want to tell you that. Wow. So people are getting in touch with their basic values, simplicity, and so somebody might say, I don't want to live sped up anymore. I'm done, right? Okay, so, but they realize, like you said, there's a gap, okay? But knowing that, getting that insight, it's called positive confusion. I've identified, I have self-knowledge, I know who I am. Baruch Hashem, I'm a mile ahead than where I used to be. So a fault line, especially when you really acknowledge it and you stop running away from it because you're too sped up, he's your best friend. Isn't that amazing?
So what are the steps to moving forward from there? That seems overwhelmed. Like, what did you call it? Confusion? What is it? It's a great word.
Confusion.
Positive confusion. That is shutdown material. Like when I'm confused and there's too many things, it's like there's just this feeling you want to shut down. How do you get on the other side of that?
This is not too many things. This is just a fault line. I don't like where my marriage is, right? I want to make a stand about that. I'm going to move forward. Now, there's a thing called, it's called the what, how klal, the what, how principle, okay? You don't need to know the how, right? You just have to know the what and the why and really want it, and you'll get the how. Right? That's
fantastic. I think just a second, Rabbi, I just wanted to explain fault lines to people because it's very clear, but then it occurred to me, people who don't live out of earthquake land may not know what we're talking about. So basically what happens is you have Earth, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not a geologist, is you have Earth, and then you have, like, an earthquake would go like this, but long before an earthquake, there are fault lines. Is that right? Like there are potential huge problem, a big gap.
There's gaps between the land masses, and that might cause the shake. So we wake up and we say, you know something, I got this big gap in my life. I have this big gap in my family. I got this big gap in my sped upness. I got this big gap in the way I'm living.
That they didn't realize before. It's like suddenly that stilling the world for 2 months or more, that has let them see what they didn't see before.
Or they knew it, but maybe they were running away from it. Maybe, right? Maybe they were too sped up, or they didn't want to face it, and now you're facing it, and that's beautiful.
Okay, so hold on. I have a question in here. How can I keep the momentum going on the inspiration that you're sharing?
Right. Okay.
That's an Instagram person, or a Facebook. I can't tell. Just ask that question.
Once again, that's what we're going to be doing in the chabura. That's exactly the whole point of the chabura. For 4 weeks, we're going to be learning how to make those things come alive, right? But the main point is that you want to have what's called a long introspection seder to really decide that this is it. Yes, I'm going to do this. And then every day you want to have also an introspection seder daily.
What's an introspection seder, Rabbi?
Hisponenus, right? Hisponenus means I'm introspecting, I'm contemplating on the deepest principles of my life. Like a major, major principle in all of Judaism, probably the number one most important thing is to introspect daily, right? I have a chavrusa who we actually do it on the phone opposite each other, an LA guy, by the way, I'm not going to tell you his name, and we were doing it for 25 years straight. Can you imagine that? We introspect every day on the deepest stuff in our life over the telephone, and we do a certain thing, whatever, we do a certain sheet, a certain approach about it. But you got to keep it alive by every day taking some time out and introspecting on the deepest things. And this time period has presented us with such existential, for many people, existential insights that's one of the ways to keep it alive.
Interesting. So
we're going to talk more about this when we get to positive habits. I'll tell you more.
We'll get that in a minute. But we do that with journaling, or even an app, just to keep is that what Rabbi's talking about? Like doing, I want to improve this in my life. This isn't going well. I'd like to put more attention on this. Is that what happens in that introspection process?
Okay, it's a big discussion, but basically it's like a computer. You have to upload your memory into your consciousness. I hope you got the lingo over there, right? I have something's in my memory. It's in passive knowledge, and I'm going to upload it to the front center of my mind, from memory to consciousness, right? And we do that in Judaism. It's best to do things verbally if possible. Okay, oral gets it into the nefesh, into the soul. There's different techniques in how to do that, but journaling is a good one. But here, if people are getting these insights and you want to make it last, every day you introspect on the basic and most important principles of your life. It is the most powerful Jewish tool in the whole world. I'll speak strongly about that. You have to learn how, but it's amazing.
Wow. What were you going to say, Sarit? Oh, you're sending me something? I don't hear Sarit. She's trying to ask a question.
She's on mute.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, go ahead, Sarit. Sarit, do you have a question?
Yes.
She's off mute. Yeah. No, she's on mute again.
She's somehow on mute, Adam.
Do you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
I feel like Verizon. Can you hear me now? At Verizon, we're looking for advertisers, so feel free to advertise on the Ladies Talk Show. So Rabbi Niven mentioned having an epiphany during this time, and I actually had an epiphany that makes me almost feel guilty and bad, and I have a hard time figuring out how to process it, because so many people I'm talking to are just constantly complaining. They're overwhelmed. There's so much work. The schools expect so much. Their kids are making them crazy, blah, 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 blah. And I actually feel the complete opposite. I feel so blessed. I feel like quarantine is amazing. I feel like we're so lucky. There are countries that this is daily life all the time. They can never go out. They're restricted. The government tells them how to do everything. They can never move. Our reality is so different. We're not in, God forbid, a Holocaust. We're literally in our homes with technology, communicating with people. I've learned more in my short time in this month and a half than I've learned in years. Like, I just feel like there's so much good and there's so much blessing and we're so lucky. And so I feel guilty when people are talking to me and I'm like, I feel blessed. I don't, like I'm starting to feel like, is there something wrong? Am I not sensitive enough? Am I not caring enough that I just don't have that sense of like the world is falling apart?
No, so that's very normal. I mean, that's what we're shooting for. I would say you have to find like-minded friends, right? We talk to. You have to talk and share. You have to talk and share with them these principles. One of the most important principles in the world is to have it's called soul family. Your closest friends who you connect to, and you connect to them on a long-term, like-minded soul family who completely understand you. That's another big principle here.
Right. No, because Leah calls it, I guess, survivor guilt, and I don't want to have survivor guilt. I don't want to feel bad that I'm, like, in a sense, surviving.
No. But if you have an insight, talk about it, get it into you, and then try to help other people. That's the way to do it. You want to help other people.
Thank you.
Help.
Okay. That's fantastic. Okay, let's go right into now, Rabbi, dealing with losses, because we're dealing with our own losses or our friends' losses. Maybe there's health, maybe people haven't survived it. We're dealing with even petty losses. Rabbi had talked about, our senior who was losing their senior year of high school or whatever. That's a huge loss. So if you could talk a little bit about how to deal with this, how to cope with this, and how to not just survive, but thrive through this time, through all the losses that people are feeling.
Well, of course, there's different levels of losses. So, I mean, the deeper losses is a very deep, obvious subject. How do you deal with tragedy and loss? But on a basic level, many people have had financial losses, obviously. People have had health losses. People have had many different things are happening in people's lives, but that can be really, really not being able to connect to your family, right? I have 7 children who are not allowed into my house. Can you imagine that? Because we're separate, because me and my wife have special illnesses that we can't come in contact. What about elderly parents who are sitting alone, right? So it's very important to understand that the body has a mechanism for losses. It's called in the official language, it's called the 5 stages of mourning. And for these type of losses, it's the 4 stages of mourning. So when you have a type of loss, it's very important not to suppress them, but to feel them. And the first one is called shock and denial. The second one is depression. The third one is anger. And the fourth is acceptance. So if a man, let's say, lost his job, right, or lost a lot of money, and it's going to take him many, many years to get it back, he might need to go through these 4 stages of mourning, which is not just about relatives, right? So if somebody has had a loss and you're really feeling the grief, don't suppress the grief. Don't suppress it. Feel it. Allow yourself to cry. Allow yourself to have it's hard being a mother, being down like that, but take a certain amount of time every day to go into the room and be sad and to cry and to feel the feelings. The more we try to deny the feelings and push them down, they pop back up. So if you understand you're in a process very similar to Shiva or something, even though it might be more prolonged or in a different way, and you accept your complicated emotions, so that will go away.
Shiva is a mourning period, for those of you who may not know. Shiva means that when someone dies, you spend 7 days in a mourning period where you sit on low chairs and everything like that. And it's everyone's like, oh, it's so depressing. But you know what? it's a cathartic thing. You are able to process the emotion. It's very genius, Shiva. But anyway, so you're saying these losses were going into sort of a little bit of a Shiva, and some people might be in Shiva for people family members who've died.
But we don't let ourselves sometimes feel our feelings, and when you've had a significant loss, like even a simple thing is disconnecting from your elderly parents. You can't see them, you can't touch them, you can't hug them for 3 months now or 2 months now. That might be very significant for people, right? Even things like that. I married off a boy last year in around December time. He's not allowed in my house, right? Until the virus gets less serious. Haven't seen him for months, right? Very close with him. Okay, so you have Skype, whatever. It's not the same, So we all have our personal losses, and we want to feel them. We want to acknowledge them, and we want to acknowledge when it happens. We're going to be feeling irrational. We're going to be angry and maybe a little depressed. And don't say mommy is not allowed to be depressed or mommy is not allowed to be sad. You say to your husband, I need a little bit of personal time today. I'm going to go in the room and cry your eyes out for an hour and a half, and that's healthy. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. There's a whole science of mourning and going through life challenges and life stages. That's part of our psychological well-being.
So you mentioned the four stages.
On Facebook, Robin asked from before, how long should it take for the goals that you set up to be implemented? Meaning, what time frame do you set up for the
Great
goals?
question.
How long? Facebook.
Which goals? Which goals?
When you have an epiphany and you're making an insight and you have an insight and you want to move forward, what time frame should you use and what logistically should you do?
That's what the goal is. If a man needs to restructure his business so he can have more time with the family, that might be a 3 to 6 month project, right? He has to work on their marriage and figure out how to renew their connection with their wife because they're roommates, because they've both been so busy in their worlds. That might take 3 months or something, till they...
Rabbi, explain what you mean, roommates.
Oh, okay. I'm married, Leah over 31 years, 32 years soon, right? So, there was once a time in our life where we had 5 children, 4 years and under. Can you imagine such a thing?
Oh my God.
We had twins in there, right? So we were both very busy. And, so sometimes the man could be the breadwinner and study with the children. You could be living and not connecting. And sometimes a man and wife have to realize that they are the priority. Their unit is the priority. And if their unit is the priority, the kids will be okay. But sometimes we get so busy with the children and our livelihood that we forget to connect. So many people in this crisis have seen that they can connect because they've had many, many hours to be with their wife and to reconnect, and they don't want to go back to the old way. Did I answer that? Did I answer your question?
Yeah. So you're saying roommates would be that they're just busy getting the stuff done without connecting.
Without having emotional intimacy. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I'm actually seeing a lot of people saying that during the busyness of normal life, they don't see the fault lines as much. And now that they're 24/7, whatever, he's micromanaging her, he's telling her, why did you do that? And there's a lot more tension in the house. Not that they're spending a lot more lovely time together by the fire.
But that's not necessarily fault lines. That could just be high stress. It's very important to know the difference between high stress and fault lines, right? So what happens is that we were going to, in another program, maybe we'll do the map of moods, right? But when the well-being of the house gets below a certain level, people start, arguing and things like that. So it could be there's a lot of stress. The mother doesn't have people helping in the house anymore. She lost her help. Or all the different things, or she's got 5, she's running a dormitory, she's running a camp, a 24-hour thing. So it could be both the husband and the wife are high stressed, and therefore they're going. That doesn't necessarily mean fault lines. That just means the house is in a bit of a low state. Mm-hmm. So you have to know how to separate that. And
That's very good. Very helpful. Very helpful.
Yeah, but Leah, you as the marriage guru, how do you deal with that? Because honestly, Leah, that's all I'm hearing from people. I'm literally having friends calling me up saying, I really don't like my husband, and I realize now that I don't know why we're together. Like, we are just not surviving this. And I find that stressful situations lead to divorce, whether it's a sick child, whether it's, financial. Those are the divorce leaders. So this is you're hearing it in other countries. The divorce rate is rising across the board. So how do we stop that here in our world?
Yeah. So it's great. So
I have my answer. What's your answer?
Yeah. So the issue is that, as we talked about when Charlie Harari was on the line, this is not a time to make big decisions in your life. This is like, and you got to watch that show, guys. The Charlie Harari, just look him up. You can find him on our website, or you can find him on Facebook. Look around, you can find. But that show where we talked about don't make huge decisions in your life. So when the tension is ratcheting up, there's a couple of things that can be done. One is to understand, and we talked about this in our show yesterday, about right now we're all training for the Olympics. It's kind of like when you look at an Olympic athlete and they have put in, they're swimming, someone's swimming for 12 hours every day. Like, are you serious? Like, how do they keep up the motivation? How do they even get in the pool? Then they get out, they have some lunch, and they go back in. Like, I would just be, okay, I'm done. The reason is because they have the gold in front of them. They see themselves going up on that platform and having a gold medal put around their neck. That's what keeps them going. So our gold is connection, is deep connection with our husband. That's our gold. And that's what we're going for. We're all in the Olympic athletes right now. We're just trying to survive, but we're putting in 12, 14, 16 hours every day just to keep things afloat. But if we keep our mind on the goal is to be closer to our husband, that's number one. Forget about anybody else on the planet Earth. The goal is closer to your husband. That's what you were created for. That's what you were born for. That's why you're alive, is to create that closeness. It ain't easy. We got a lot of classes, a lot of shows to watch to learn how to do it better. But that's the gold that we're looking for. If you keep that in the forefront of your mind, and you maybe make it a Post-it note and put it on your mirror, put it on your phone, make a little sticker. If you do that, right, and you have that goal in mind, then when your husband says, how come, we're out of Cheerios? What happened? You're like, hello, there was none I went to 4 different stores looking for Cheerios, cut me some slack or whatever. Instead of jumping down his throat, right, you realize, I want to be closer to him. He's just under stress, under tension. This is very challenging for him. He lost his job maybe, or he's working harder, or he's dealing with the kids and he's never had to sit and do a puzzle with the kid and it doesn't suit his personality and he's having a hard time with it. Maybe he's better with babies and with teenagers, but he's not good with 4-year-olds. Who knows? He's having a challenging time, and understanding that and keeping your mind on the goal will help you deal with the day-to-day things. The other thing is to realize that these tensions, everybody's feeling them. We're all like in a level of a crucible of what's a crucible? Vice, we're all dealing with that. We're dealing with the stress, our own anxieties, our own inability to control our own mind. So in that tension, that's not a good time to sit there and make huge decisions. I mean, I had a woman say, I'm really just fed up with my husband. Maybe we should get divorced. I'm like, hello, you are this is not normal life. You can go, you don't give up like that on something. If you spend 1 year in therapy with your husband and decide it's not working, that's one thing. But to give up in the middle of, with a few things, and he's being micromanaging, and this is a hard time. He's going through a hard time. You're going through a hard time. Let it rest, relax, just get through it, do the best you can, think of the goal, and don't react in the moment. And those are just some tools that you can use. You can watch the show from yesterday. We had 5 secrets, and actually I gave 5 extra secrets, so there's 10 secrets in the show from yesterday. But right now, the main thing that we want to know from Rabbi Niven is when people are dealing with this, what in their mind, this is what you are known for, of having people what you can do to have mastery over your mind, so that your mind isn't controlling you, you're controlling your mind. And that's what I'd like to hear Rabbi speak about.
When people get into a low state, when people get into a low place, that's when they short circuit, right? And you don't trust what you're thinking in a low state. Many times
you shouldn't, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you shouldn't trust your mind in a low state. Yeah. Okay.
Right. When sometimes you're in a low state, the whole world is falling apart. You get a good night's sleep. You wake up in the morning. You say, "What's that problem I had?" Right. So we're all in. When there's high tension, it's likely to be in a low state. And never label your marriage when the house is in a low state. And that's one of the most important things. Even if you have a blowout with your spouse, you're going crazy. You say, okay, we're in a low state right now. Things are a bit low with this, just like you said, but never label. And you want to know something? I was coaching a guy just the other day, and he had a blowout with his wife, but we've been working together for a while. And he said, okay, I'm just going to let this slide. I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to wait till my thinking goes up. And he just did. And he didn't give any power to this huge fight that he had. Disappeared. You see that?
We have an Instagram single who actually could be divorced, who actually is, hearts all over for what you said, because she's saying actually more singles want connection and relationships right now than ever, because they're feeling so alone. And, just leaving your marriage is not a solution.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And also, I want to say, for those who are single and divorced and widowed and dealing with those kinds of issues and the loneliness, this is very, very challenging at this time. I'm getting actually a bunch of emails about this, about just feeling lonely and in a sense bereft, like isolation. And that, yes, it helps to FaceTime and this and that, but the chats they're not feeling it. So a couple of the thoughts that you can do to bolster yourself at this time is to use your imagination to create your future life. So in other words, maybe with a journaling or brain dumping, as Rabbi says, but, my grandmother, Oliver Shalom, was very close with her, and she used to say that you need three things in life. You need something to do, someone to love, and something to look forward to. So something to do, people might be bored and they're binge watching certain things, or they're, maybe some people I found, are busier than ever. I have a good friend whose business is booming, Amazon business. So they're doing it all from home, but they don't have a second to sleep and they don't want to miss this great opportunity. So some people are crazed and some people no, all my activities, my going to the gym and my routines, so I'm bored. Some people are very, very bored during this time. So we don't know why God gave us this. I don't know why. It's God. We know if God gave it to us, it's got to be good. It might feel bad at the time, but the ultimate, it's got to be good for all of us, and each of us individually. So looking into our own, doing the introspection that Rabbi's saying, of looking at what can I do? How can I recreate my life? So if you're single and divorced and widowed, or even if you're married or whatever, is to think a little bit, take this time and this opportunity to be creative with your imagination, and maybe draw an outline that you might have been a little girl and said, I always want to be an artist. And then, you got through school and you realized artists aren't making any money. And, whatever. And now you became an accountant or a bookkeeper because you just felt like, but since you were a little girl, you knew you wanted to be an artist. Now would be the time. Buy yourself some books, or go on YouTube videos or whatever. Learn an art. Learn a new thing that is sort of buried way back in the recesses of your mind. Maybe explore those areas that you kind of shut out because, you had to be a grown-up. Okay? So adulting or whatever, you had to get to that place. So that would be something you could do. You could think about, I don't know that I would go into figuring out how you can be a better person at this time. It's too stressful, and the gap between where we are, where we want to be, it's just too fraught with the chance that you're going to just beat yourself up for regrets. If you had married that guy, a single who's older, I have a lot of singles who are older who regret, if I should have just married that guy. that you can make yourself crazy. So I don't know if I would go into the cerebral. I would stick to moving forward. Like my grandmother said, something to look forward to, and start creating what that might be. Whether it's as simple as, okay, I'm going to do the project of going through the closets. I know I've put it off for forever. And the great thing to do, you can get a friend and she comes over and helps you with your closet and you go help her with her closet. Doing it yourself is very challenging. We had Tracy on a couple of months ago, and she was talking about organizing, and we all want that, but we've got to make it easier for ourselves. So the bottom line is to try and find projects that you can do in the future, maybe some you can start right now, that can get your mind thinking in a different way and not ruminating. So let's go to the last point, which is we want to get to getting to healthy habits, Rabbi. So can you speak a little bit about that, getting back to healthy habits, or getting to healthy habits, because maybe we didn't have good habits in the future? And what kind of habits is Rabbi talking about?
Well, the first habit is to take 15 minutes a day to schedule and prioritize, right? To take our tasks for the day and figure out what we have time for and what we don't have time for. If someone takes 15 minutes a day, just 15 minutes, right? Just doing that, you clear your mind for the rest of the day because you know what you're doing, you've decided. So in your 15 minutes, this is a bit advanced, you schedule, you prioritize, and you decide what you're doing for that day. And then you don't need to think about what you're going to do for that day because you've done all the work before. That's a huge anxiety release. A huge anxiety and overwhelm release is to learn how to take 15, 20 minutes a day to schedule, to prioritize, and decide.
So explain that, Rabbi. How do you do that? And do you do it the night before? Do you do it that morning? What if you're a night person? What if you're a morning person? And how do you build flexibility into it so you're not feeling stressed?
Well, there's a thing called peak time. Peak time is when we're at our best. So my peak time is between 6 and 8 in the morning. 6 a.m. and 8 in the morning. And when you're in peak time, you can get 300-400% mileage out of that hour. Isn't that amazing? So you want to find the time in the day where you're peak time. I can never do a schedule at night. I fall asleep at night. I don't have a brain late at night. So whenever is the maximum time in the day where you could do that, a 15, 20-minute investment will clear up your mind for the whole day. And how to keep to the schedule is another type of skill, but you would want to see how to build your schedule in a way that you have spontaneity, that you have fun, that you have self-care time, that you have hobbies, and you want to have a certain level of flexibility as you're going through the day. That's a simple answer.
So in terms of getting back to healthy habits, you're saying that's the very first habit, if you can institute that in your life, that would make the biggest shift. In stress level? Is that a stress level technique?
It gets rid of anxiety and overwhelm, because I know I have 5 priorities today, and that's what's in my mind, and not the other 50 things that are swirling around. I have 5 priorities. I have my schedule. I've scheduled my priorities, and I've decided that this is what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to do the other stuff, right? People walk around all day long deciding. They get this thing called over-decision. They're just like, by the end of the day, their brain is like mashed potatoes because they're deciding all day long. Here, you decide for 15 minutes a day. Now, that's one.
So you're saying, what do you call it? Over decision? You mean, in other words, their whole day is about trying to readjust what they're doing.
Yeah. What am I going to do now? Should I do this or should I do that? Or should I do this or should I do that? And the brain is like a muscle. By the end of the day, he gets tired. That's why we run for the refrigerator at 10 o'clock at night, because the brain is tired. There's no more willpower. So just taking one time in the day to just think, okay, what now? You don't have to be too rigid. You could even schedule spontaneity time. That's an interesting concept, right? You want to be loose. You want to be happy. You want to have self-care time. We'll talk about that also. So that's huge. So in this time of stress and overwhelm, now not everybody knows how to do this, but if you could gently, lovingly, and incrementally do that, it's a huge, huge upgrade. That's number one. Number two is to have an introspection Seder, okay? 5 or 10 or 15 minutes a day, where you introspect on the most important values and goals in your life. That's worth $1 million, because that keeps you in line with who you are. It keeps you authentic and living your mission and life purpose.
And that might be the thing after this crisis is over, because I can't imagine someone squeezing 5 minutes. Yeah?
Right. We do that in Elul. In Elul, we decide what a year is all about. We think, we write up our yearly goals. We have an Elul plan, a little piece of paper, maybe you remember it, right? And you keep your Elul plan with you the whole year. Elul is the month before Rosh Hashanah. But anyway, that's number 2. And number three is self-care. A woman needs to make sure she takes care of herself. I'm sure you must speak about in your program. You got to make sure you're exercising. You got to make sure you're resting. You got to make sure you're, eating right. And without that, nothing works. So I'm sure.
Yesterday, when you mentioned the LL plan, you had said that it was something, where your goals align with what your actions are, But the question is that, does Rabbi feel that people should be, doing that? In other words, to get back to healthy habits, we only have 2 more minutes, so you have to answer this standing on one foot.
There's 2 different types of people right now. There's people who don't have any time because they're with the kiddies, and there's people who have a lot of time. For those people who have a lot of time, it's a nice time to introspect. It's a nice time to do some deep thinking, take a walk, think about your deeper values. That's a great way to do that. And most of all, to get in touch with who you really are on the deepest level. And if you can get in touch with that either now or in Elul, which is a couple months away, so our Elul plan guides us through the whole year. It's who we are, what we're all about, how to be authentic.
Okay, very good. Rabbi, tell us in one sentence, tell us about this program that starts on Sunday and how they can, and the correct email, the correct website, not that. Okay, so yeah.
We have a program, right, I think it's called New World, Do You. Is that what we said it was? New World, Do You. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be going over these epiphanies, these experiential insights we have. 20 minutes of a recording on Sunday, which is the concept. 20 minutes with an exercise on Tuesday, and then we're going to meet and talk it out on Thursdays for 4 weeks. And the whole idea is, how do we take our epiphanies, our experiential insights, and understand what they are and bring them into our life. We have a second program called Lockdown and Marriage, right? How do you take the principles of your marriage and what we've been talking about, how to survive lockdown and marriage, and how do we we can make these next month or 2 when we're home alone, we can qualitatively make a huge difference in our marriage. So that's what we're going to be doing. Also the same format, Sunday 20 minutes, Tuesday 20 minutes, and then we're going to meet on Thursdays.
So it's a real integrated course. And both of them start on this Sunday?
Yeah, and the website is newchabura.com. Okay, NEWCHABURA.com.
That's fantastic. Okay, fantastic. Any last questions, Sarit? I think our time is up. Do we have anything?
No, we're good.
We're good. Rabbi, this has been a lot to think about. Rabbi, thank you so much for coming on the show. It really expanded the mind. Everybody has to watch the show again just to absorb everything that you heard here today. We're very thrilled and honored to have you on our show. Thank you very much for being with us. This is Leah Richeimer with the Ladies Talk Show. We'll see you next time.